I'm going to take this piece of watercolor paper that I've just messed around with, just doing some circles, line colors to bleed out. I'm going to now just do a little bit of stamping over it, maybe with a little bit of text or some numbers, just to break up the background, and then I'm going to convert this into some ephemera. Well, this has turned out fabulously, and I'm really thrilled with the result. I've used quite a fine little text stamp, who knows what it says, cursive writing, and I've used some walnut stain distress ink because I had these lovely earth tones over here, and I thought I'd try and pick up some of this sort of ready raw sienna, burnt sienna mixture of tones there. I've done it over the blue as well, and I'm quite happy that I've done that. Then I found that I had some book page where I'd actually stuck some images of birds down previously, so I fussy cut out some of the birds, and I've only used the top layer of the napkin or the serviette to stick those down. Book page are quite nice, it just gives a bit of weight to the serviette, but also you've got a little bit of the text showing through. Having fussy cut some of them, I thought that they could be quite nice as focal points in some of these little spheres. That one's missing a bit of a tail, even that with its little tail sticking out. So I'm just going to have a think about that, and then I'll come and show you where we're going to go with this. So I've glued down my little birds, which I had on my piece of card. Very happy with those. And I've separated these two sections. I've given myself a bit of extra space on this side, just simply so that I can actually have options. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with them. I'm not making anything in specific in mind. I'm now going to separate these two birds, just because there's a clear definition over here. And then I'm going to separate these two as well. Aren't they gorgeous? I just love those. Right, here I've got a bit more of a conundrum, because as you'll see that this little circle overlaps down round here. So I think what I'll do here is I'll just fussy cut them out, because I'm not going to be able to keep them with the text. I can always use these text pieces later, and I'm going to give myself a little bit of space around the circles so that I have a little bit of the text showing through, and I can ink up. I can always reduce the amount of text on the outside of the circle if I wish. This will go quite quickly. If you want a tip for cutting circles, keep your scissors straight and move the paper. That's the easiest way. Alright, so there's a little circle. That's lovely with a little bit of green on the side. So that's the one there. And then I'll do this one next, because it hasn't got anything other than a circle to cut. When you've got lovely papers like sketch papers or anything that's slightly thicker, that is easy for all kinds of mixed medium, make sure that you use up as much of it as you can. That's why when I was doing the stamping, I stamped right across the whole page, because as you'll see when I've loosened these birds, I'm left with a lot of space, for want of a better description, where I can actually use that. I could make that into something else. Look at that little one, really gorgeous. And we'll do this last one together now. This one's got the little tail, so I'll just go around the outside of the tail. And I love its cheekiness of the way it just sort of pops off the page. I must say I've had such fun doing this, because when I started making the backgrounds a day or two ago, I really had not been feeling well and was very dry creatively, and this just was a very simple little exercise just to loosen up one's brain again and get one going, and I'm very happy with that. Look how beautiful that is. Oh, I'm so thrilled with these. And you could there again, if you wanted to, mount it onto something as well. So I've got those three little loose pieces of ephemera. I have these, which could be journal cards, they could be tags, they could be made into pockets. They're blank on the other side. You could do all sorts with that. Now I have this piece of card which is left over, and if I'm smart I will just cut these lovely pieces with the text block on off, so that I've now got something that I could use as other pieces of ephemera like that. And we'll just slice this one through here. Let's go this all the way through. Okay, so I've got two pieces of text there. And then this particular piece I don't have any specific plans for. I kind of leaning towards maybe making it into a pocket of some sort. I'm not too sure, but let me show you the other things to begin with. So we've got those three lovely little birds, 1, 2, 3, like that. We've got our two pieces of text, and we have those lovely birds, which could be tags or pockets of things. You still have loads left over here as well, so I could trim that and cut those off and make something out of that, just use it as part of a collage piece. Quite lovely little pieces here as well, but let me play with these watercolor ones here now, and I'll make that up into something. Well, I divided my piece of card into two pieces lengthwise, 6 centimeter strip and a 5 centimeter strip. And then I found in one of my Daphne's Diary magazines these lovely sort of tiles that look as though they're around a wall, and I thought I could make those into quite a nice focal point. So on the first one, where this is the 5 centimeter strip, I've divided it into 4 pieces, which I'm just going to cut now, so that I've got smaller sections. I don't know why that sort of rusty metal wall paneling just caught my attention, but it did. And don't discount things that you can find in magazines to use. I know one tends to think you've got to buy ephemera online and it's got to be something that's a brand name, but you can make an awful lot of this stuff yourself. Right, so I'm going to snip this off here as best as I can. I'm going to try and line it up so that this is straight with the guillotine, not necessarily straight with the paper. All right, so we'll put that aside. And then I have 4 blocks here which I can use really nicely, so let's loosen those. There we go. And this is quite a nice thing to do when you've got a piece of card that is sitting around and you're not sure what you're going to do with it because it's maybe a little bit too busy or you don't like the colors. This is a nice way to use that as a background for your project. Right, so I'll have 4 little blocks. You put those over that side, like that. Right, set the guillotine aside. Let me just get my ink. Now what I'm going to do is to use some of my vintage photo. Now, I have used walnut stain over there, but this is a slightly different color, so I'm just going to use my vintage photo to drag around the edges here, just so that we don't have a glaring white end to the piece of card. I'll do that with all of them. There we go. Inking your edges is pretty much the same sort of thing that happens when you put a mount around a picture that you're going to frame. It just draws your eye inwards, and usually because they've picked up a color of the picture in the mount, you will find that it's actually very harmonious. Whereas if you've just got a cut edge, it does look simply like a cut edge. There we go. You could use a blending tool if you wanted some of the color to go more into the tiles, but for now I'm happy that I've just inked the edges here. And then we are going to glue one piece of tile onto each of these. Maybe just cut them down a little bit. I might cut them down just to that section. Let me just see. It's going to very much depend on each individual tile. This will require re-inking, but nevertheless it doesn't matter. There we go. Oh, I do like that. That's really nice. So I'm going to ink up the rest of these, and then I'm going to glue them down. Okay, so I have gone and glued these little metal tin plates down, but in gluing them down I realized that actually when I looked at them, the color seemed to sort of wash out quite a lot if you look at the one on the right compared to the one on the left. And so what I've just done to highlight that was simply take a normal pencil crayon. This is just an artwork. This is Van Dyke brown, which is more or less a medium kind of brown, and all I've done was just to go around the outside edge. Having inked the edge with walnut stain, I still found it wasn't enough, so I've just gone around the outside edge of my image just to give it almost a shadow here. And then where I have these lines that are definitive, I've simply just used my pencil crayon just to create more of a shadow, and it just simply makes it pop out. And then in the little spaces, if this were an actual piece of metal, I would want to take gilding paste and rub it over, but I'm just simply using my pencil crayon just to create a little bit more dark in these spaces and just go around the outside edges a little, and that's just making it pop up a little. So very simple trick to just use your pencil crayons just to add a little bit more detail where necessary. Alright, so I'm getting that all the way around this image, around the metal, and you can see that that's just lifted it a little bit, and I might just do a little bit around this edge here too, just to make that a little bit more defined. So I'm quite happy with that. Now the next thing that I've done is to cut up a piece of maps. I had picked up at a charity shop this lovely ordnance survey book, and the maps in here are on this lovely textured linen pad almost, and I've just cut up some of this to create some ephemera. So I measured the inside of my little block here, and that was 1 centimeter square, and I have cut out a little piece that's 1 centimeter square, and I'm now just going to put a little blurb of glue on just in the middle so that I don't have to spread it too much. And then I'm going to take that and position this in my metal tile like that, and then I'm going to set that aside just to dry for a minute. I have another piece where I've actually glued a piece of that map down, and I've cut a larger piece of the actual map to go through with that so that that color ties up there. So I'm just going to glue this to the backing, just a little bit of glue around the edge here like that, and keeps one's fingers clean just to use one's tweezers, doesn't it, just to secure that down nicely there. Right, now the next thing that I'm wanting to do is, oh, this one wants to pop up, stay. I'm just going to wait that while I glue the next one down. Alright, so I have another piece of my map, and I'm going to do exactly the same with this piece of card. Pop that down on the center here. I think because my map paper is quite a lot thicker than the actual card that I've done the watercolors on, it's just wanting to lift a little bit more. There we go, it should stick now. Great, so then I'm going to glue onto here a small little bee that I had cut out from a Daphne's Diary magazine. Now it's very difficult when you've got tiny little images like that to glue them down. So my trick is, I have this piece of plastic here which is just an offcut from a laminated piece of card that I'd done. I've put a little bit of glue on here, and I'm just using my tweezers just to simply rub all the tiny little parts of the bee in the glue, and I find by doing it this way I don't make an awful mess. And I'm just going to simply put that down, press it into place, and Bob's your uncle. So that's quite a nice piece of ephemera. I love the colours that tie together. I am busy working with some things to do with field notes, etc., and I think that that could tie up quite nicely. I have another one here where I've actually stuck the little bee down, and this was just a piece of card that was left over when I was cutting out my little birds and things that I showed you earlier. And although it's not completely straight, I'm nevertheless going to stick it down on this offcut of the map, because my idea here is just to glue it, or which side I want it, just over here. I'm just going to glue it onto the back of this piece of card, like that. And I want those numbers at the bottom sticking out. So let me just get that straight. There we go. So although I've got something that is slightly different to the first one, the colours are still part and parcel of the same. And I will continue to just add layers for those other little ones that I've done. Okay, so we've got all the main components stuck down. Just on this last one, I've got this little piece of map here, and I feel I'd like to actually make this into almost a hinge. So I'm going to take this section right at the end that's got this line on it, bend it backwards so that that could be the actual hinge. And then I'm going to glue that onto here, and then that could be a little journal spot. So let me just run a tiny bit of glue on this section. That. Line that up nicely. There we go. And I'll just snip this end bit off. Right, now I'm going to work on the other strip that I had to create the next bit of ephemera. So this was my widest strip, and I'm going to break this up into two sections because I'd almost like to make two little fronts of pockets. So I'm going to do that, and then I have a piece of mapping. There is a natural fold in there, and I'm going to actually use that. So I'm going to cut it along this fold line. And now I'm just going to quickly, I think I'm going to just punch out a little half moon in here so that I actually can have a finger space, because this will make it a double pocket. How much do I want to take out? It's quite a shallow pocket, maybe that much. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same on here. Just by lightly folding this, I'm able to quickly gauge a center point. Do that one like that. So those two will go together, and I'm planning on layering them up like that. And then I'm going to do the same for this, except I'm going to cut this piece off, I think. Okay, let's cut that off, find the center point, make a notch. Oopsie. And the same with this. I think I'm going to put the patterned part at the bottom, just so it's a bit different with the others. There we go. So I need to ink up these cut edges, just using a bit of walnut stain to do that. I'm going to ink this up, and along this cut edge, and this one here as well. And the same goes for this one. I think I forgot to do these edges. Right, so now we're ready to go. I'm going to use a little bit of Elmer's glue just to secure the 3 sides of this down. So I'm going to position that centrally. I'm going to glue it down on those edges. Look at this lovely linen backing. Just really, I think it's gorgeous. And if you've got a map that's got this kind of backing, it's so nice and sturdy when you opening and closing it. Not that people really use map books anymore, but I do like them. I like to see a big picture rather than just a snippet on a Google map. Right, I want this over slightly. There we go. Press that down. Perfect. Let me do this one. Oh, goodness me. Bit of weight. Here we go. Use what you have at hand, eh? Right. There we go. So we're gluing this all nicely in, in position. To me, the lines that I've used in the watercolor background, these blue lines and these green lines and things, represent in your mind a little bit of sort of this typographical sort of feeling of a map. So I'm quite pleased with that. So I'm going to now just use my hat pin to make some holes. And I want to put in some little brads. So I'm thinking possibly these sort of pewter color ones will be quite a nice match. So let's start with this one. I'm going to put one in each corner. Make sure you keep your fingers out the way while you're doing this. Oopsie. So this is actually a quilling tool that I've got. You could use something like a tapestry needle. Those will work well. You could use any kind of pokey tool that you might have from paper crafting. Quite often if you do pergamano and that, you've got quite nice pokey tools. But just make sure when you are using them that you keep your fingers out of the way, because they will be sharp. Right, if your tails or these little split parts are too long, then you can always just cut those with a pair of pliers to fit your size. You don't want them sticking out if you can help it. Slide that in. So by the time I've finished this, I will have made out of one sheet of cardboard, whereas just started off playing around with a fairly random background, quite a few pieces of ephemera that I will be able to use in my journals. I'm not really going to decorate much more than I've got on here, but as you can see, you could use all kinds of little labels, you could use images. If you were going to use this particular one in something like a field notes or a nature journal, you could put all your flowers and things in there. Otherwise, whatever is your fancy. Let me get some more of these. I think the little bit of hardware on there just actually adds quite a nice detail. And if you start tucking in things, and remember that this would be backed onto a page, that would actually be quite nice on its own. You could have some little images if you wish. Oopsie. These are so difficult on this desk. I must find a different mat. Maybe a few numbers. It's entirely up to you. So I will give you now a visual of what all the ephemera looks like together when we have made it and it's all laid out. Thank you for joining me, and if you've enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. I really appreciate you watching. Bye for now.